My name is Olivia Carter, and until a few weeks ago, I believed my life would always be small and quiet, fading into the corners of America where no one ever looks. I grew up in a worn-out house on the far edge of Denver, Colorado, a place where the paint peeled off the wooden steps and the windows whistled when the wind blew. My parents, Rebecca and Anthony Carter, always said the problem was the house, but I knew deep inside they blamed me for every little thing that went wrong in their lives. They never said it kindly, but they said it often enough for me to believe it. They told me I was slow. They told me I was a burden. They told me I did not try hard enough. And worst of all, they told me that nothing good would ever come from me. When you hear words like that every day of your life, you begin to think the whole world agrees with them. For a long time, I lived in that belief, shrinking myself down so I would not be noticed, so I would not make them angry. But 3 days before everything changed, the truth caught up with us. It was late at night, and the house smelled like old coffee and tired arguments. My father paced across the living room while my mother followed behind him, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. They told me I was wasting my time and theirs. They shouted that I had no future, that I did not earn enough, that I had done nothing to help them. I tried to defend myself at first, but the more I spoke, the louder they became. At last, in one sudden, cruel moment, my father pointed toward the door and yelled, "Get out, Olivia. Take your things and leave this house. You are not our daughter anymore." My mother stood beside him, her arms crossed and her face cold. She did not defend me or try to stop him. She simply nodded, as if the idea of throwing me out was logical, simple, easy. So I packed my small suitcase, only one because that was all I had, and walked out of the front door into the cold Denver night. The streetlights glowed weakly above me, and the air felt too heavy to breathe. I walked for almost 20 minutes before my friend Hannah Brooks, who lived near Capitol Hill, answered her phone and told me I could sleep on her couch. I remember lying there that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I had fallen out of my own life. My eyes burned from crying, and my chest felt hollow, as if someone had removed a part of me I would never find again. The next morning came with a kind of silence that scared me. It was the silence of having no home, no plan, no family to call. I sat at Hannah's small kitchen table, trying to sip a cup of weak coffee, when my phone buzzed with a call from a number I did not know. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me whispered that I should answer. When I picked up, a calm female voice said, "Hello, may I speak with Olivia Carter?" "This is her," I said, though my voice shook a little. "My name is Grace Miller," the voice continued. "I'm an attorney in New York City. I'm very sorry to tell you this, Olivia, but your uncle, Edward Sullivan, passed away last month." I went still. My uncle Edward lived far away in Miami, Florida, and I had not seen him in over a year. But I remembered him more clearly than I remembered most people. He was the only adult who ever treated me with warmth. When I was little, he sent postcards from his trips to Europe, with pictures of London's bridges, Paris's cafes, and Rome's fountains. He told me I should dream bigger than the four walls of our house in Denver. I never believed I could. Before I could say anything, Grace continued, "Your uncle left behind a will. You are his only heir. He has left you $55 million. The kitchen around me blurred. The chair beneath me felt like it was floating. For a long second, I thought I might faint. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Can you repeat that?" "Yes," she said gently. "Your uncle left you $55 million. We will need you to travel to New York to sign the necessary documents and confirm your identity. If you prefer, we can arrange for a representative to meet you in Colorado. Whatever you decide, we will help." My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Nobody in my life had ever given me anything of real value. I had spent years trying to avoid making noise in my own home. And now someone was telling me that I, a girl who slept on a couch the night before, was worth $55 million? Hannah walked into the kitchen then, and when she saw my face, she sat down beside me and grabbed my hand. I put the phone on speaker and let Grace explain everything again. When she finished, I could barely breathe. Grace's voice softened even more. "Olivia, he cared about you. He made that very clear in his will. I wiped my eyes before a tear could escape. After the call ended, Hannah hugged me tightly and said, "See? You were never the problem. They were." But even with that comfort, it took hours for the truth to settle inside me. I kept thinking back to my parents' voices, the anger in their eyes, the way they pushed me out like I was nothing. I wondered what they would say if they knew the daughter they threw away had just been handed a fortune. But I did not plan on telling them. Not then. Not ever. That afternoon, I met with Grace over a video call. She explained what my uncle owned: a house near Los Angeles, investments in several companies and multiple accounts in dollars, and even a small savings in pounds from his travels in Europe. Everything was now mine. I felt the world tilt again, but this time in a way that filled me with a strange sense of power, a feeling I had never known. For the first time in my life, I realized something simple but life-changing. I did not need my parents anymore. I did not need their approval, their voices, or their cruel words. I had the chance to start over, far away from Denver, far away from everything that had wounded me. And that was the day everything changed. Moving into my uncle's house near Los Angeles, California, felt like stepping into a world I never believed would belong to someone like me. The first morning I woke up there, I lay in a wide, soft bed that felt almost too perfect to touch. Sunlight poured through tall glass windows, turning the walls a warm gold. Outside, I could see the tops of green trees, a bright blue pool, and beyond that, the gentle rolling hills that surrounded the property. Everything was so calm, so clean, so different from the small, tense house in Denver where I had spent most of my life. The house itself was almost like a dream. It was a modern villa with smooth white walls, long hallways, polished wooden floors, and rooms that seemed to breathe with space. There were 4 guest bedrooms, a music room, even though I could barely play an instrument, a kitchen big enough for a team of chefs, and a living room with tall windows that let me see the sky from almost every angle. My uncle had chosen soft colors: white, cream, gray, and touches of blue, making the whole place feel peaceful, almost like a quiet vacation home on the edge of the world. But it was mine. All of it was mine. My uncle had also left behind something I did not expect at all: a full security team. At first I thought it sounded strange or dramatic, but when I met them, I understood why he trusted them. The head of security, Marcus Hill, greeted me on the very first day. He was tall, with a calm face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. His voice was steady, deep, and reassuring. "Miss Carter," he said with a respectful nod, "your uncle cared very much about your safety. He wanted this house protected at all times. My team and I are here to make sure you feel safe." He introduced me to the others: Luis Moore, a quiet but dependable man with a gentle smile; Aaron Blake, who always stood with his shoulders straight and spoke with a firm voice; and Jonah Reeves, the youngest but also the fastest thinker on the team. They watched the cameras, walked the grounds every hour, and checked the gates before anyone could come close to the house. Their presence made me feel something I had never felt before in my life: protected. I did not need to worry about someone yelling at me through a closed door or about walking on eggshells inside my own home. Nobody here expected anything from me except to live my life. That alone felt like a luxury worth more than all the money in my accounts. Speaking of money, my lawyer Grace Miller helped me set up new accounts with my uncle's inheritance, the full $55 million. She spent hours patiently explaining how taxes worked, how investments should be handled, how not to trust people too quickly, and how to avoid anyone who saw me as a walking wallet. Her words were clear and gentle, and she treated me like a real person, not like a mistake or a disappointment. But even as I tried to breathe in my new life, a piece of my old life followed me like a shadow. I had not spoken to my parents since the night they threw me out. I told Marcus not to tell them where I was living, and I hoped they were too angry or too proud to come looking for me. I was wrong. One warm evening, just as the sun was melting into the horizon and casting orange light over the trees, the gate buzzer rang. The sharp sound broke the quiet of the house and sent a cold pulse through me. Marcus checked one of the screens in the security office. His eyes narrowed. "Miss Carter," he said carefully, There's a man and a woman at the gate. They say they are your parents." My entire body tightened at once. It felt like something in my chest dropped to the floor. I took a slow breath, but it did nothing to calm the shaking in my hands. Somehow, my parents had found me. Somehow, they had come here. I walked with Marcus down the path to the main gate. I could already hear angry voices on the other side, rising and falling, echoing through the intercom speakers. When we reached the gate, Marcus pressed a button that allowed me to see them more clearly. There they were, Rebecca and Anthony Carter. My mother's hair looked messy and rushed, and my father's shirt was wrinkled. They did not look sad or apologetic. They looked desperate and hungry. Not for me, but for what I suddenly represented. "Olivia," my mother cried, her voice sharp with fake sweetness. "Sweetheart, open the gate. We just want to talk to you." My father stepped closer, gripping the bars. His eyes swept across the driveway, the house, the tall windows, the garden. His breathing changed when he realized what he was looking at. A house worth millions. A life worth more than he ever imagined. "So it's true," he said slowly. "You live here now, and you're the one holding the money." He didn't say my uncle's name. He didn't say he was sorry for what had happened. He looked at me like someone looks at a bag of cash sitting behind a locked door. "We're your parents," he said sharply. "You owe us. Give us our share of the money." Something inside me froze, then hardened. They had thrown me out onto the street like trash. They did not check on me. They did not worry. They did not show a shred of love. And now they came here because they heard a number. $55 million. My voice was small at first, but steady. "This is my inheritance. Uncle Edward left it to me. You never cared about me before. You only care now because there are millions of dollars involved." My mother's face twisted into something dark and angry. "We made you," she hissed. "You would be nothing without us." Marcus stepped between us, his voice low and firm. "Miss Carter, would you like them removed?" I swallowed hard, trying not to shake. But I knew what I had to do. "Yes," I said. "Do not let them inside. If they refuse to leave, escort them away." Marcus nodded once. My parents exploded into screams. They called me selfish, ungrateful, heartless. They pounded on the metal bars and cursed the guards. But Marcus and the others stood still, like tall shadows protecting me. As the guards pushed my parents gently but firmly away from the gate, my father twisted back and pointed a shaking finger at me. "You will regret this, Olivia," he shouted. "You will regret it." The gate slid closed. The lock clicked. And even when their voices faded into the distance, those words stayed stuck in my mind like a splinter. I stood there long after they were gone, the night growing cooler around me, the sky turning darker. The guards returned to their posts. The house lights glowed behind me like a quiet promise. But inside, something felt unsettled. Something warned me that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The night after my parents came to the gate, the house felt different in a way that made my skin crawl. It was the kind of feeling you get when a storm is coming, even before the clouds appear. The air inside the house felt heavy and thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I tried to shake off the tension by telling myself that I was only nervous because of the argument with my parents, because of the anger on their faces, and because of my father's last warning. But no matter how much I tried, the uneasy feeling would not loosen its grip on me. After dinner, Marcus assured me that the guards would be making extra rounds throughout the night. He said it calmly, like a man who had seen danger before and knew how to manage it. His confidence helped a little, but I still felt something pressing inside my chest. I tried to distract myself by reading in the living room, but every small noise made me jump. Even the sound of the wind brushing the window felt strange. Around midnight, I finally went to my room on the second floor. The house had become quiet again. Too quiet. I changed into simple sleep clothes and stood by the window for a moment, looking out at the moonlit garden, the pool still and black like a mirror, and the silhouettes of trees moving gently in the breeze. It looked peaceful, but the peace felt thin, like a fragile layer hiding something underneath. I crawled into bed and tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying the scene from the gate. My mother's furious expression, my father's pointed finger, his voice promising that I would regret my choice. Their words circled around in my head over and over, so loud I could hardly hear my own breathing. Eventually, my exhaustion pulled me under, but even then, my sleep was light and broken. Sometime before dawn, I woke up coughing. At first, I did not understand what was happening. My room felt too warm, far warmer than it should have been. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and sat up. That was when I smelled it, smoke. Thick, sharp, burning. I felt a jolt of fear rush up my spine so fast that I almost could not breathe. Before I could get out of bed, Marcus's voice came through the intercom beside my nightstand. "Miss Carter, wake up. There's a fire on the east side of the house.
Stay calm.
We're coming for you right now." My heart began pounding so hard I felt it in my fingertips. I grabbed the small emergency bag I kept under my bed, a habit I picked up after moving here. Inside was my passport, some emergency cash in dollars, and about 1,000 pounds in pounds that I kept just in case I ever needed to leave America for Europe without warning. I slung the bag over my shoulder and moved toward my bedroom door. When I opened it, a wave of heat hit me, and I saw gray smoke sliding across the ceiling like a slow-moving cloud. The hallway lights flashed red as alarms screamed throughout the house. My breath came in short, sharp bursts as the smoke scratched at my throat. "Miss," someone shouted. I turned to see Luis, racing up the stairs 2 at a time. He grabbed my arm, guiding me quickly down the hallway. "This way, stay close to me." We ran down the stairs, each step echoing loudly in my chest. The house that had felt so open and bright yesterday now felt like a burning maze closing in around me. Even through the alarms, I could hear radios crackling, guards shouting directions, and glass cracking somewhere near the east wall. When we burst through one of the side doors, cold air hit my face so suddenly that I gasped. The early morning sky was a pale gray, and in the far corner of the property, tall flames clawed at the side of the house. The fire was angrier than I imagined fire could be. It hissed and roared, licking up the wall where the guest room windows were. Smoke billowed into the air in thick, dark clouds. I stood there shivering in my thin clothes, watching part of my home burn. It felt unreal, like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. My hair smelled of smoke, and my hands trembled so badly I had to clench them into fists. Marcus stood near the main gate with a tablet in his hand. His eyes were locked on the glowing screen. When he looked up at me, his face shifted from worry to something else, something sharp and furious. "Miss Carter," he said, motioning me closer, "you need to see this." I walked to him slowly, my legs shaking, and looked down at the screen. The tablet showed a recording from the security cameras along the back wall of the property. The video was grainy in the dark, but the shapes of 2 people were clear enough. They climbed over the wall with metal cans in their hands. My heart stopped. The taller figure moved in a way I knew instantly, his walk, his shoulders, the angle of his head. It was my father. The smaller figure, with long hair tied back, moved beside him. That shape, that size, that posture, I knew it was my mother, even before she turned her head just enough for the camera to catch a small piece of her face. I watched in horror as they poured liquid along the side of my house. I watched my father strike a match. The bright, tiny flame glowed for less than a second before he bent down and touched it to the ground. The fire ignited fast, stretching out like it had been waiting for someone to wake it. I put my hand over my mouth as the truth crashed into me with full force. "My parents," I whispered. "They did this. They tried to burn my house while I was inside." The fire department arrived minutes later, sirens screaming down the road, trucks pulling through the gate with lights flashing. They worked as quickly as they could, spraying water and foam across the burning wall. The guard helped them guide hoses around the property. After what felt like forever, the flames began to shrink, then finally died. When the last of the smoke drifted into the air, the damage was clear. A large section of the wall was burned, one guest room was half destroyed, and the yard was covered in fallen ash. But the house still stood, and I was still alive. Police officers arrived soon after. Marcus handed the video to an officer named Detective Carla Brown, a woman with firm eyes and a calm voice. She studied the footage with a seriousness that made my heart sink even further. "Miss Carter," she said, turning to me gently, "I'm sorry you're going through this. With this video, we'll be able to track your parents down quickly. This is attempted arson and attempted murder. They will be arrested." I stood in the yard barefoot, wearing nothing more than a sweatshirt and shorts, feeling the cold morning air on my skin. But the cold I felt was deeper than that. It was a cold that came from inside, from knowing the truth. Not only had my parents pushed me out of their lives, not only had they screamed at me at the gate, not only had they tried to take my money, they had tried to destroy the only home I had ever felt safe in. They had tried to destroy me. And as the sun broke through the gray sky, all I could do was stand there, shaking, breathing shallowly, and realizing that nothing would ever be the same again. 2 months after the fire, I walked into the United States District Court in San Francisco, California, with my lawyer, Grace Miller, beside me. The building felt cold the moment I stepped inside, as if all the warmth had been sucked out for the sake of seriousness. My hands shook slightly, and I held them together to steady myself. It was strange to think that this was where everything would end or begin again, depending on how the day went. The courtroom itself was larger than I imagined. Tall ceilings, long wooden benches, and bright lights made everything feel more intense. The American flag hung proudly behind the judge's bench, reminding me that this was real, official, and final. Then I saw them. My parents, Rebecca and Anthony Carter. They sat on the left side of the room, their wrists handcuffed, their clothes wrinkled, their faces worn. They didn't look at me, not even once. My mother stared down at the table, pretending to cry, while my father kept his jaw tight, his expression frozen in anger. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the people they could have been, relief that they could not reach me now. Grace guided me to our table on the right, whispering softly, "You're safe. Take a deep breath." When the bailiff announced, "All rise," everyone stood as Judge Helen Williams entered. She looked calm but powerful, a woman who carried authority with every step. The trial began with the prosecutor, Robert Hayes, standing in the center of the room. He spoke with a steady voice, every word clear. "Your Honor, this case is about attempted murder, attempted arson, and deliberate destruction of property. The victims and evidence show that the defendants planned this attack and carried it out with full intent." He pressed a button, and a large screen lit up with the security footage from my house. The entire courtroom watched as 2 figures climbed over the back wall in the grainy night video, my parents. There was no mistaking their shapes, their movements, the way they carried the gasoline cans. It felt like watching a nightmare while wide awake. My stomach twisted as the match lit on screen, the fire catching instantly and roaring toward the wall of my home. Some people in the audience gasped. My parents didn't move. They just stared forward, empty and cold. Robert Hayes continued showing pictures of the burned wall, the destroyed guest room, and the text messages where my parents talked about teaching Olivia a lesson and getting what we deserve. Each new piece of evidence felt like another stone dropped into my chest. Then Marcus testified, explaining how he discovered the fire and helped get me out safely. Luis testified next, describing how thick the smoke was and how close the flames came to reaching the staircase. Their calm words made everything even more real. Finally, it was my turn. My legs felt weak as I walked to the witness stand. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat down, my heart pounding so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. I took a slow breath. My parents kicked me out of their house in Denver. They told me I was worthless and that I wasn't part of the family anymore. My voice wavered, but I continued. After I inherited $55 million from my uncle, they suddenly showed up at my new home near Los Angeles. They demanded money, and when I refused, my father told me I would regret it. The courtroom was silent as I spoke. And the next night, they came back. They poured gasoline on the wall and set it on fire while I was asleep inside. I didn't cry. I felt empty, like all my tears had been spent long ago. But I felt strong, too, stronger than I had ever been when I lived under their roof. When I returned to my seat, Grace squeezed my hand. "You did exactly what you needed to do," she whispered. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that they were confused, or drunk, or had only meant to scare me. But the video, the messages, and the fire itself were louder than any excuse. When Judge Williams finally spoke, her voice filled the entire room. "Rebecca and Anthony Carter, this court finds you guilty on all charges." My mother began to cry harder, her hands shaking. My father stared at the floor, his jaw tight. "For your crimes," the judge said firmly, "you are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison and ordered to pay a fine of $2 million to your daughter, Olivia Carter." The crack of the gavel echoed like a final door closing. Outside, reporters crowded around, cameras flashing, voices shouting. Grace wrapped her arm around me and pushed through the crowd until we reached the car waiting at the curb. "You don't have to talk to anyone," she said softly. "I don't want to," I whispered. That night, back in my rebuilt Los Angeles home, I walked through the guest room where the fire had burned. The new walls looked perfect again, but I could still remember the smoke, the heat, the fear. I sat at my desk with my notebook open and began writing everything down. My story, my truth, my survival. People say forgiveness heals, but forgiveness isn't something owed. Not to people who tried to destroy you. I didn't forgive them, and I didn't need to. What I needed was peace, and for the first time in my life, I finally had it.